Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for On SI every single day since August 2019. And we're continuing to march through yet another offseason together. All right, folks, welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. We are now well into the start of free agency, and as expected, it's been quiet for the Jaguars. I don't think anybody should be surprised, especially not if you've been listening to this podcast for the past several weeks and months. Really, nothing's been a surprise. We told you guys Travis Etienne and Devin Lloyd are probably leaving. We said that they need to bring back Monteric Brown and Dennis Gardeck. They did that. We said that they would make a number of moves to free up cap space. They released Johnny Munt today. They've restructured who is it? Robert Hainsey, restructured Jordan Lewis, restructured Eric Murray, restructured Patrick McCarry. This free agency has gone as expected for the Jaguars. The one thing since our last recording that's changed is late Monday evening, Devin Lloyd signed a 3-year, $15 million per year deal with the Carolina Panthers. $45 million for Devin Lloyd. And I'll be very frank. I was surprised at the price. I guess I shouldn't have been after what we saw Quay Walker and Nakobe Dean sign for. They were obviously never going to get as much as Lloyd, but I thought Walker would be the one getting the $50 million a year deal. You know, like Nick Bolton and Jermaine Sherwood. I thought that was going to be Walker's price point. Seems like it wasn't a great free agency process, you know, for the off-ball linebacker position. They just, you know, didn't make clearly as much noise as I think a lot of people, you know, expected, myself included. I thought Devin Lloyd would get close to $20 million a year. It didn't come close, $15 million. I think because of the surprise of the price tag, and because so many people, us especially, have talked for so long about how we expected him to, you know, be near that $20 million a year mark, I think that left some Jaguars fans disappointed that they couldn't figure something out with Devin Lloyd at $15 million a year. I'll be honest, and I'm saying this with as little bias as I could have. I still think the Jaguars would have been making a bad decision signing Devin Lloyd at $15 million a year. You can't re-sign everybody. Of course, the Jaguars for this year, their cap is impacted by the Gabe Davis dead money and Tyson Campbell dead money. That's not why the Jaguars shouldn't have paid Devin Lloyd. They could have figured out a way. But in 3 years, 2 years, are you going to be happy about that contract? I'm venturing to guess no. Because I believe that the Jaguars can get similar production from another linebacker, whether that's Ventrell Miller, or whether that's Jack Kaiser. That's not to take away from the year Lloyd had. Lloyd was a top linebacker last year. He's a very gifted talent. He's very, you know, has a lot of traits, especially athletically, at the linebacker position. I mean, there's a reason he was drafted in the first round to begin with coming out of Utah. With that in mind, the Jaguars saw firsthand what Anthony Campanile did for Lloyd, who was still fighting for the job in week 1 with Ventrell Miller. Campanile, for my money, is a linebacker whisperer, one of the best in the NFL. He's essentially has gotten Quay Walker and Devin Lloyd paid. Anthony Campanile is the coach with the biggest stamp on the linebacker market this season. I personally believe, and I think the Jaguars should believe it, that Campanile can develop another player just like he developed Lloyd. Because, frankly, the narrative and insinuation that Lloyd was kind of for 3 years and then turned it around last year, that's not necessarily a kind one, but I think it's accurate. He was benched as a rookie, a first-round pick, being benched as a rookie for third-round linebacker Chad Muma. Was it much better in 23? And 24 was pretty much a wasted year for everybody on defense. I don't count that against Devin Lloyd, but for 75% of his time in the NFL, he's been a different player than he was last season. And I don't blame the Jaguars for letting another team pay him. In fact, I think the Jaguars made the right call. Are they getting the third round comp pick? No. But they are projected, according to Over the Cap, to get a fourth round comp pick for Lloyd. And that's obviously unless they sign some kind of deal to cancel it out. Right now, they're getting a fourth for Lloyd, a fifth for ETN, and a sixth for Greg Newsome. Getting a sixth for Newsome, I think, is pretty good business. Because you have the trade with the Browns for him that, increased their draft capital by so much. And now you can throw another pick, onto that trade, really. The Jaguars, nobody really expected them to retain Newsome. But there was always a scenario in which, they could have benefited from him departing, benefit from Devin Lloyd departing, benefit from Travis Etienne departing. The Jaguars aren't making the fun decisions. They're not making, I'd even say, the popular ones. Would it be better for a Jaguars fan to wake up to the news that they just paid Travis Etienne, Devin Lloyd? In the moment, surely. The fan favorites are a reason. They're both great locker room guys as well. And guys I really enjoyed covering. But you can't make contracts and pay with your heart. You can't. You got to use the logic. And the Jaguars' logic, at least to me, was, wow, we have 5 big free agents. How can we keep 3 of them? And to me, they kept the 3 most important. They kept Jacoby Myers. They kept Cole Van Lannon. They kept Monteric Brown. And they let the running back and the linebacker walk. I don't see any fault in that logic. I don't see how that isn't being met with resounding nods of, we understand. Well, I do see it. I understand. Fans were really high on both these guys. And both these guys had great seasons. But with that in mind, the Jaguars, simply put, were better off not doing the Devin Lloyd contract, even at $15 million a year. And when they extend Trayvon Walker, and when they extend Parker Washington, and when they extend Brendan Strange, I think people will finally be able to accept that fact. Now the question is, how did the Jaguars replace Devin Lloyd? Because to me, if you're talking about Lloyd and Etienne, I think Etienne's the better player. I think Etienne is a better running back than Lloyd is a linebacker. I do, with that said, think that Lloyd's production will be tougher to replace. He just has such a unique skill set, especially as a blitzer. He has a big body. He's long. They don't have any other guy on the roster currently like that. How do you find a guy like that? And can you generate some of that production lost by Lloyd in some other areas of the defense? Does Dennis Gardeck blitz more? Can Foye do more as a blitzer this year? I think all genuine questions to ask. But with that said, I think the Jaguars need to continue to look at the veteran linebacker market. I still think that Leo Chenal is a guy who would be very interesting to add. He's somebody who I think could give you very similar things to Lloyd, and you probably get him maybe not a third of the price, but probably close to a half. I think Landon Roberts is another name. Started for 3 years in Miami with Anthony Campanile as his coach. He's a lot different from Lloyd. He's like a hammer against the run. He's a designated, run-stopping linebacker. If anybody remembers Vince Williams, played for FSU and the Steelers. He's a hammer against the run. Absolutely fantastic against it. And there's a reason Brian Flores loved that dude. And there's a reason Bill Belichick loved that dude. There's a reason Mike Tomlin loved the Landon Roberts. But he's a liability in the passing game. He's never been, exceptionally athletic or very rangy, and it's still diminishing by the season. So I think ultimately, the Jaguars have options, and they need to look at them. But I don't think for a second they made a mistake on the Devin Lloyd front.